Welcome to my first video log here at Jeremy McHugh on YouTube. And my project is, well, I've got a new painting on the easel. This one I just wrapped up not a couple months back. And what occurred to me is that no one really got to see the making of this painting. People got to see the still shots, works in progress, and all that. But I didn't record this painting process on camera, and I thought maybe it'd be fun to we'll get started. I'm going to do another painting, a new painting from the same project. Again, this is my take on the realm of giants, called Giganteus, and what's fascinating to me about this process is that I teach illustration, drawing, concept design. And I've been working as a freelance illustrator for the publisher, the tabletop game publishing industry, since 2001. And so I've been at this for a good long while, but I've decided it's time for me to do my own thing. So, Giganteus. And I have some other projects I'll be working on as well. But this will be the studio video log for all my for my future projects. And I hope you'll get to hope you'll be able to swing by, join me here in the studio. It's a fun place. I'm looking forward to sharing it with you. So, to get started, why don't we talk about where it all starts, really, and that is with thumbnailing. So, following through my process, so I keep a sketchbook, and most artists, we all keep sketchbooks for the most part. And I've heard it said that an artist is basically a sketchbook with a person attached to it. And I think that's pretty true. So, I've been kind of just following the theme of the Giganteans. My polysyllabic version of giant, I guess. But you can see these seem probably pretty rough to most people, and this is really just notational, I suppose. In many ways, I kind of rough in the big shapes, and I've been searching for a concept. And I really liked the idea that the Giganteans, some of them, like to nurture forests to grow. And then some of them will even create a mantle, that they can carry around with them. And my take on giants is that they're almost immortal. They live for just eons, and they continually grow through all that time. And so with this one, this is what I settled upon. And moving from there, I decided, I worked up in a little bit of marker just to get the big black dark shapes, and I really liked the concept here. So I took that, once I felt I had something adequate here, I took that and I worked up a watercolor study. Well, that's what this is. If I hold this back here, hopefully you can all see that now. And then from there, we're going to proceed to, going to draw this piece. The way I like to do it is I like to draw on. I'm an oil painter now. I was a digital guy for about 7 years. And then I moved over to acrylics, and now I'm working in oils. So I went the opposite direction. I think that some of my compatriots have gone. It's like we did a high five as we walked by each other in the hallway. You're going to digital? Yeah, I just came from there, man. I'm going back to the colored mud. So there I am once again, playing with colored mud, much like the way I did when I was a kid. So, I'm working on a watercolor illustration board, which is really nice. Cold press. I believe this is a Canson product. I'll have to double check it. But what I did was I then mounted that with artist tape to foam core, which gives a nice rigid body. And I'm going to proceed my underpainting. I'm going to do that in watercolor, because I love watercolors. And I find it a bit more versatile perhaps than just a wash-in of thinned paint, which you might do if you're doing a wash-in in oils. You'd probably be thinning that paint with some odorless mineral spirits and kind of working your washes onto this board or primed canvas. In my situation, I prefer to work with watercolor for its versatility. So what I'll be doing is working up the drawing, then proceeding to the watercolor painting of this, and then I'm going to seal that business and paint on top in oil paint. So let us begin. So what we have here is the original watercolor. It's my watercolor study, which is really a very well developed sketch. And this is probably further than a lot of folks might choose to go. I like to have a nice little watercolor at the end of my process too. So I'll have an oil painting that's going to have a slightly different character than the watercolor. But the watercolor, I happen to enjoy both mediums. So now with this one, some of the things, the key features here, as I do like this sketch, but some of the things I might consider changing, we'll see how I like it. I'll experiment a little bit. I may decide to pull the camera back a little bit so that we can see more of the edges of the tree, rather than have it cropped at left and right. And maybe I'll have a little bit more sky. I'm not sure. But those are things I'll start to experiment a little bit with. Not too much. Nothing too drastic at this stage. Some key features here you want to note. There's, for instance, I use a lot of contrast when I'm trying to develop my composition. The idea of where do I want people to look first? And I really want people to look pretty much in here, where her face is being framed in the shot. But I'll, that's why I make a little area of contrast in there, because our eyes are really drawn to contrast. So that's important, and I want to see if I'll have to make sure that I maintain that. Some other things I want to resolve. I think I might have her arms doing something a bit more interesting than simply kind of being obscured by the edges of the forest here. She's quite large, and maybe I'll give a bit more presence to this little, you can barely see it here, but there's just a little person standing there on this ridge. So, little things like that, and I'll just keep playing with it as I go. In the meantime, I'm going to, just going to hit this pretty hard, okay? And I hope you'll let you watch over my shoulder, see if you like this. You've probably noticed that I've made some interesting changes. I've made some changes from my original watercolor study, and I've decided that actually I wanted to give the female Gigantean a more active pose. She was looking kind of passive in my original sketches. You can see she looked a bit more restful, and I decided in this one I was going to give her a bit more attitude. I gave her a pose. She's kind of holding a young sapling in her hand. I think she's getting ready to plant it on the shoulder in her little mini forest that's growing on her shoulders. And so I've kind of roughed in the basic shapes of the treetops. This is just kind of like the silhouette, if you will, the big shapes. And hopefully this will read really interestingly at a distance. And now I'm also establishing some of my foreground elements. I might just do it kind of roughly and do quite a bit of the invention in the paint itself, the watercolor. I don't think I want to get too bogged down in it, but I'll be thinking in terms of those big masses here. There'll be a bit of a forested ridge line right here, and you'll see I think there's going to be a lone human perched right about there at the edge of a cliff. Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun, this piece. The terrain of Giganteus is very rugged. Most of the mountains are kind of in the scale of the Himalayas, for instance. I think that they are just truly. I mean, everything about the continent on which these beings live is gigantic. It's huge. And human beings are very much a recent, basically a newcomer to this place, to this world. And well, I'll get more into some of those storylines and some of those ideas behind this fantasy world as time goes on. But I'll just let you work over, hang out, watch over my shoulder as I draw, and very soon I'll be moving over to some watercolor washes, and that'll become my underpainting. Thank you so much for joining me today here in the studio, and I hope you enjoyed watching the drawing take shape. This is just the kind of the rough under drawing, which we're going to now refine next we're going to refine it in watercolor. And once I feel pretty confident where things are headed, I will seal that up with some spray fixative, and then I'll seal the whole surface in an acrylic medium, probably, yeah, and that will protect the paper from the oil paint that will follow. And I'll be detailing that process in the next episode. But in the meantime, I hope you'll consider subscribing to this channel on YouTube, and perhaps join me on Patreon, where I get to share the finished pieces of my work along with writing and other studio goings on. So, but I'll show you. There'll be a link in a moment. But thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you next time here in my studio.